Phenomenology / noun philosophy now. Phenomenology, the science of phenomena as distinct from that of the nature of being. An approach that concentrates on the study of consciousness and the objects of direct experience.
Philosophy of experience. But this we already know. So what would be the future of phenomenology? Many still tend to think of Husserl's transcendental phenomenology and Heidegger's and Merleau-Ponty's hermeneutical and existential phenomenology as excluding alternatives. The argument given is frequently that only the latter introduce the topics of intersubjectivity, sociality, embodiment, historicity, language, and interpretation into phenomenology, and that this led to a decisive transformation of the Husserlian framework.
Stephen Crowell recently claimed that the future prospects of phenomenology will depend on the talent of those who take it up.
According to Marion, Husserl's inability to consider the non-present and absent. This is why the Husserlian phenomenon, defined as unconfined to presence for consciousness, is a flat phenomenon, a phenomenon without any depth.
So surface phenomenology should turn to a depth phenomenology.
This move, which might be considered the second phenomenological breakthrough, after Husserl's Legis unter Suchungen, was accomplished by Heidegger insofar as he calls for an investigation of the being of beings. But for the very same reason, Husserl's ontology prevents or prohibits him from understanding the question of being that Heidegger had posed. Despite Husserl's frequent emphasis on the cardinal difference between reality and consciousness, he never really understood that this difference amounts to an ontological difference, a difference in being.
Rather, he consistently took consciousness to be a region that could be objectively determined and failed to realize that its mode of being differs radically from the mode of being of worldly entities. So for us to understand the critique, we have to look for the meaning of ontology.
Ontology /noun ontology, plural noun, ontologies 1. The branch of metaphysics dealing with the nature of being. Ontology is the philosophical study of the nature of being, becoming, existence, or reality, as well as the basic categories of being and their relations.
Traditionally listed as a part of the major branch of philosophy known as metaphysics, ontology deals with questions concerning what entities exist or can be said to exist, and how such entities can be grouped, related within a hierarchy, and subdivided according to similarities and differences.
So the duality reality versus consciousness is exactly the point where the critique towards Husserl concepts rose. There's an ontological difference in perception, the difference of what is being and the fact he took consciousness to be a region that could be objectively determined and never understood. That the true and innermost destination of phenomenology is to provide ontology, the being, with its proper method and analysis.
To summarize the main points. 1. Husserlian phenomenology doesn't thematize the very phenomenality of the phenomena. 2. It privileges an act of constituting, works on the objectification of the being. Therefore it doesn't do justice to the specific mode of being of consciousness, since it consistently interprets it as a form of object being. 3. Finally, due to its emphasis on objective subsistence, Husserlian phenomenology has only an eye for presence. It fails to consider the givenness of the absent and non-present. The absent and non-presence.
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 The absent and non-presence. The absent and non-presence.
The absent and non-presence.
The absent and non-presence.
But the critique has also critiques. For the author of the text this video is based, Dan Zahavi, Husserl didn't fail on his theory. Or as Dan Zahavi said,
Husserlian phenomenology has the resources to tackle all four issues. It has investigated the very dimension of phenomenality, rather than merely different types of phenomena. It has repeatedly emphasized to what extent intentional activity presupposes passivity. It has analyzed the non-objectifying mode of being of consciousness, and it has discussed the interplay between presence and absence in extenso. Then some of the pinpoints are:
Husserl writes that the intentional experiences themselves are lived through, but he denies that they appear in an objectified manner. They are neither seen nor heard. They are conscious without being intentional objects.
This is not to deny that we can, in fact, direct our attention towards our experiences and thereby take them as objects of an inner perception.
Husserl does not seek to identify the self-givenness of our experiences with the givenness of objects.
He observed that we are aware of the perceptual object when we are engaged in a perception. But what about the sensations and the perceptual experience itself, you may ask?
They are also conscious, but are not given as perceptual objects. We know that we can turn our attention away from the perceptual object and towards the perceptual experience. In this sense, it is possible to reflect upon the experience.
So how is it pre-reflectively present? Husserl answers the question by distinguishing between consciousness in the sense of experiential being and consciousness in the sense of intentionality, whereas the latter involves directedness towards an object, to say, object consciousness, while the former does not.
A final conclusion could be that Husserl's notion of reduction is the original breakthrough.
It is the reflective move that once and for all opened the field of phenomenological research.
And it is an opening that is presupposed in every proposed radicalization by subsequent phenomenologists.